Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of This Week in Crypto Philanthropy, where we highlight the top giving news, stories, and power of crypto for good. Nick Mikhalevsky, Senior Sales Manager here at the Giving Block, and joined by my colleague Pietro Moran. Pietro, how's it going?
It's going well, Nick. How are you doing? What a great way to cap off the year. I'm excited to do this episode. And we were chatting a bit before we started the recording. I'm actually joining from my family's house in Italy, where my mom grew up. Funny enough, but all the more reason to say like what an epic year we've had, and just like a very like in a very reflective mood, and thinking about on what we've seen and what we expect for the next year. Like super pumped to jump right in.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a great end of the year, I think. We'll talk a little bit this week about what's been going on kind of in the year end giving season. I'm sure if anyone in fundraising is catching this episode when it drops this week, probably doing a million things, trying to catch as many of those last minute gifts that are out there. So, for today's topic, we're going to give a little bit of an insight into some of the giving activity that we've been seeing moving through the Giving Block Rails so far. We'll talk about a couple new case studies that we have from some great organizations that we've been working with, including an organization that we actually had on the podcast, and hopefully we can have back to talk about some of the crypto giving success that they've had this year. And then wanted to just provide a really quick, an email template that converts. I mean, we have a great team at the Giving Block that works with fundraising teams across all types of organizations. And at year end, especially, always love just giving some, additional tools in the toolkit. Obviously, we have our own year-end fundraising toolkit that we always provide for the year-end giving season. But if anybody's looking for a last-minute thing, you can just copy and paste right into an email and send off to a couple friendlies. Our data shows that there's been a pretty good success rate for this particular email. So thought it'd be a good time to highlight it. So with that, as always, we are still doing our $500 in Bitcoin when you get started with the Giving Block. We'll talk about what a year it's been. So scan that code, talk to our team. We'll help you get set up and kickstart your fundraising journey with a little dollar in Bitcoin. So with that, what a year it's been. Let's talk about the year-end giving season. And Pietro, I guess before we kind of get into some of the the stats that we're seeing, 2024, man. Break it down for us. A lot happened this year.
It's going to be impossible, but I'll do my best. I've been in this space for going on a decade now, and that's not meant to be like, oh, I've seen this, I've seen that, but it's, I guess, just like the historical context of, and you're the same way, Nick. I mean, I feel like I speak for the two of us on this. It's like, I don't think I've ever experienced a year in which so many, I would say, groundbreaking, things of like, with weight behind them, like with gravity behind them for this industry that have all occurred like in succession. We started the year off with an ETF launch. We ended the year with, Bitcoin cracking $100,000 per unit. I mean, those two things in concurrence, you would think that they would be like two very far apart events. We got them both in one year. We got to see, an incredible amount of, I would say, traction and interest from the crypto community as far as giving back. And that's been an amazing thing to track as well. I mean, all of it just feels like somewhat surreal to me. It's been an amazing, time to be part of this ride and to be witnessing what's been going on. And if anything, it just gives me quite a bit of hope. And I would say, it gives me a good impression of where we stand to build from in terms of next year and what's to come. But yeah, would love to get your take on this. I guess the long story short is like from where we were sitting in 2016 and 17 when I was first like really trying to figure this industry out to where we are now, feels like 100 years have passed, not 9. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. This year it's been, just been such a wild ride, and it's been really great to see how much the crypto giving space has absolutely flourished. And I think there's a lot of tailwinds going into this next year. I was talking to an organization recently, and they kind of said, "You know what? This kind of feels like the beginning, not like the end of a great run. I feel like it is just the beginning of some really great transformative work that not only the industry is taken on and getting ready to continue to build on, but for the organizations in the space, for crypto philanthropy, I think there's a lot of renewed interest and a real optimism for the philanthropy space. So. Yeah, couldn't be more excited. It's a great way to kind of end the year, and with that, here's some giving season stats that we've kind of taken a look at so far, and I just put the 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 Bitcoin kind of chart just from last year's giving season to now. And I mean, those numbers kind of speak for themselves, and the organizations that have done a really great job, engaging with donors throughout the year, have really seen some phenomenal giving opportunities over the last 12 months. But a little bit more tactically, this month in December alone, major gifts, and we define major gifts as gifts over $5,000, already exceeded almost 3.5 million before we get into the final week. And the second half of December, as most nonprofits know, is huge for giving, and even the last, say, like 72 hours can be a significant portion of the entire year's giving that happens all in the last 72 hours. So pretty incredible to see that we've already started to reach these levels before we go into that final week. And taking a look at December as a whole, already over or nearly reaching that 7 million mark, and we expect that number to be higher. And taking a look at the last time we were in a similar type of bull market setup, we certainly saw that same second half of December rush at year end. So really encouraging to see. And the whole Giving Block team here is all hands on deck. Everybody's really busy running around trying to help with as many organizations as we can. So we're just getting started. But yeah, Pietro, I mean, what do you think about those numbers?
I mean, it's insane, right? I think from even just a couple of years ago when we were all like kind of at the top of the last bull market, and whether you consider that 2020 or 2021, I think it kind of pales in comparison to just how much the ecosystem in the industry has grown. And I was talking to David, who some may remember was on the podcast a couple episodes ago from our private donor services side of the business, and he was telling me just how critical that last week is for the end of the year. And I think it's interesting for me to like, maybe put myself in a donor shoes who's being a little more tactical and maybe working with a planner or an advisor and saying like, last week of the year, it's when kind of what your tax liabilities are going to be like. They're going to be way more concrete. They're going to be set in stone. And so maybe you're just waiting for that right timing to make that gift, even though you've been planning that gift the whole year. Right. And so I think that's pretty interesting. And to see us have this kind of traction going into the end of December, it gives me a lot of, I would say, like renewed confidence that not only crypto is back in vogue and investors are participating in crypto, but then like the philanthropic investor is also still participating in crypto in a meaningful way, which I think is super cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of we've taken a lot of the stories from this past year and tried to put out some new case studies, and we've been showcasing a bunch of those throughout this month, and a couple that I wanted to highlight here. And we'll have some links to these new case studies as well. But Pause and ITRC are a couple really amazing examples of crypto philanthropy this year, and you can kind of see some of the stats here on the screen. But I wanted to actually read an excerpt from the case study, and a quote from um, Andy Anderson, who's the director of philanthropy and events at Pause. Went on to say, quote, "The crypto community is action oriented, innovative, and generous beyond measure. They are changing the world, and we're grateful to be part of their impact." And one of those things that I think is a great point that we always try to help nonprofits understand, that grateful beyond measure. I mean, that philanthropic component is really baked into the community, and especially in sort of the animal space. When you layer on like the meme coins, I mean, Pietro, you talked to Bonk recently on the podcast. I mean, there's like another great example of how this community is like really rallied for these causes, and the crypto space is just absolutely generous. I mean, yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts.
I mean, it's so cool, right? Because I think so often, and you go to family dinner, and maybe this is just so top of mind because we had Thanksgiving a couple weeks ago. We have Christmas coming up. We have the holiday season here at the end of the year, whether it's New Year's and whatever you celebrate, right? I think it's just generally a time when folks congregate and come together, and everybody's talking about like, hey, what's going on in your line of work, or just give me the 411. Like, what are you up to? And the folks that aren't necessarily super close to crypto, and rightfully so, right? Because it's not their job or it's not something that's like at the top of their news feed every day. They're like, okay, so how does this stuff like become real, right? That's been one of the questions I always get when I talk to whether it's family members or acquaintances. And they're like, okay, that stuff isn't like real, right? It's all fake. But then you have to like kind of bring them back to reality or just find a way to make the two worlds converge so that it's like analogized or made to make sense. And this I feel like is one of the easiest ways to like explain that to people. It's like, well, you don't get $242,000 of donations that actually help a nonprofit who's validating that story, without a community of super generous people and without an asset class that's like robust and legitimate and actually can facilitate those types of gifts, right? So I think for me, this is actually like the huge like ace up my sleeve for all those holiday conversations of like, oh, you want to see something really cool? Like, don't think about a number goes up. Think about like, 24,000 animals with shelter that are now able to be, in a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. I love that, and it's definitely a fun part of the job. But it's just great knowing that we're providing a new channel for a lot of these organizations, and especially this year where some organizations like budgets have been in a little bit tighter. Teams have been having to do a lot more with maybe a lot less, and maybe that slice of the government pie is can only grow so large, and in some cases has started to shrink. This has provided a real lifeline to a lot of organizations, very similar to what we saw happen in COVID, where organizations had no possibilities for events, and had to really rethink how they were going to engage with the community. And yeah, I mean, the crypto community has just rallied, in all those occasions. So check out this case study from Pause. It's a really great case study. And if you have an interest in a similar sort of like, meme coin sort of dog themed, episode, check out Pietro's episode with Bonk. We'll put a link to it in the show notes. And, maybe to cap off, this year's like incredible philanthropic run. I mean, ITRC, we had the Identity Theft Resource Center on the podcast because they received a landmark $1 million crypto donation, and followed it up with an additional $2 million donation here at year end. So again, if anybody's keeping score at home this year for ITRC, they started at $0 in crypto donations to 3.4 million in crypto donations. Probably like one of the greatest success stories for crypto philanthropy this year. I mean, Pietro, we got to have ITRC back on the podcast.
I think it's a must. I think that episode was super well received. I think, one of the two things, or there's two things that really ring true with these case studies that I'd love to just kind of quickly note, which to me is like, you have Bonk, there is really dog related meme coin. Their mascot's a dog. It's like so thematically aligned with a nonprofit for animal wellness and dogs and, helping folks or helping animals out all over the world. Which makes a lot of sense because they can be really tactful and thoughtful and put, a sort of a community effort behind that with a through line that kind of makes sense. I think the same is true of ITRC. A lot of folks in the crypto community are very sensitive to like online security. They take that very seriously. We talk about this with our clients all the time. So it's just so nice to see, a nonprofit like ITRC who's also done the work. They've really put themselves in a position to succeed. Be the beneficiary of such an epic year. It's almost like you get drafted and then become the MVP in the same year. It's kind of like insane to have, this sort of like all-time run of 0 to 3.4 million. But I guess like maybe throw the ball back in your court, Nick. Like when you think about why some of these case studies and maybe ITRC in particular, like are so successful or have such a great, end to the story. Not that the story's over, but maybe at least for 24 as we go into the end of the year. Like, what are some of those things that you're really seeing as like the tools for success or the keys that other folks can unlock and then see themselves in a case study like this?
Yeah, I mean, throughout the year, we've told folks, look, one of the keys to this is just telling people you accept this as a form of donation, and you're telling them often, just so it's something that they're used to hearing. If you're only mentioning it sporadically during, a giving day, or some like single day type of event, it just has a harder time of catching on, or catching that, those donors, at the right time. So it's got to be something
Mm-hmm.
that's, continually, discussed all throughout the year. And for ITRC in particular, I mean, this is something where, our team's expertise really like was brought to bear, because, if anybody is somewhat intimidated about, getting involved in this community, and maybe not knowing, what to ask and what to say, or if something's brought to you, trying to understand what the whole situation is and trying to decipher maybe, some of these, like, these crypto projects. I mean, that's really where the Giving Block entirely shines. Our team is so good at not only stewarding these really important relationships, but helping you, understand what's actually, going on here, and giving you some ease of being able to, you know engage with this donor in a really thoughtful way. So our team, as you can see in that like middle bucket there, that less than a week, the time from first contact with the Giving Block to the first donation being processed, you know
Mm-hmm.
I think that kind of speaks to, uh, the confidence that organizations should have in engaging with the space. So if there's been like that intimidation factor, that can all kind of be, be put to the side. We would love to, educate as many of these organizations, and connect you with the crypto community. There's so many, philanthropists and projects that are looking for organizations to support. You just have to be in the conversation, and we'd love to introduce you.
Totally right. And then there's one thing I wanted to bring attention to because we were talking a little bit about this off camera, and I just wanted to re-emphasize this because I think like this is kind of a game breaker for a lot of folks who really take the time to look into what crypto donors are like, how they donate, what are their preferences, and also just like the size of the donation. So in the third column at the bottom of the slide, and for folks who are just listening, it says like number one, and it's the largest individual donation that ITRC has ever received in their history. Can you talk a bit about that, Nick? Because I mean, it's one of the themes we've had, like we hype on a lot in the sales, like kind of collateral slash like when we talk to folks and do outreach. Why is it that crypto donors end up becoming almost like an entirely different pool of folks, and like they're sort of breaking records in a lot of different ways? Like, can you talk a bit about that? Because I think a lot of folks, they think like, well, if I'm going to receive the same style of gift, maybe it's just like a nice to have, not a need to have. But when it's like it opens you up to like the biggest gifts that you could ever receive, maybe it turns more into like, oh, maybe this is something I should lean into or start exploring more.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of nonprofits are, still kind of concerned around, like, well, it's volatile. I don't really, have a lot of experience in this. We've never been approached before. And that's probably the biggest, thing that, organizations should, start to, just make a door, for those donors. We always hear from nonprofits, like, we want to meet donors where they are. And man, are there a lot of people in this space. And whether it's for tax purposes, or just purely from a philanthropic standpoint, these are donors who are predominantly on the younger side. They are predominantly have a I guess the easiest way to say it is, it's the greatest confluence of youth, wealth, and propensity to give. And for a donor demographic, for nonprofits, I mean, this is just such a valuable place where they should spend their time. And I think that's probably one of the things that I try to harp on in a lot of conversations is this is a donor demographic that is worth your time. And reason being, for statistics like this. So if you are setting up that individual giving program, if you're looking for ways to augment, your reliance on, grants or other concentrated areas of, legacy funding, you're trying to grow your major gifts program, probably the single best way of accomplishing so many of those important areas of growth for your program is in the crypto community for all of those reasons. And we have a lot of great statistics around, as you said, demographics and propensities to give. So just we're seeing it play out here in 2024, and just can't wait to see what's going to happen in 2025.
It's super exciting. Yeah. Awesome to hear that too. I mean, as you talk about 2025, it's already crazy to think the year's gone by and we have one more week. So that being said, I know we have some sort of last minute tips and tricks. It's the hottest time in philanthropy for the year. So what have you got for us to kind of close us out for 2024?
Yeah. So, we always, like to, put together that, year end fundraising toolkit. There's a lot of great things that are packed in there, but just something that, the team has put together and everybody is, I'm sure, sending out those last minute appeals here before, the tax deadline. But, a couple things that I just wanted to, call out here in that second sentence at the top, transitioning cash donors to asset donors can increase gift sizes by an average of 40 times. Again, it's great if someone's giving cash, but just educating donors on the ability to give in other assets can just be such a transformative from an impact perspective, transformative from a tax perspective. So here's a template that the team's put together. Really simple, really easy. We'll drop a link here to the tax benefit calculator as well that we've put together. It's really helpful. Like Pietro, as you mentioned, those donors that are sitting there, they know what their tax liability is going to be for the year. It's a great tool to kind of visualize what those potential tax savings could look like. We'll drop this we'll drop this template into the show notes. But at the bottom here, just want to read this out because I think it's really important. Best practice is to use matching gifts to inspire urgency. Great tip when you're going out there to your donor base. If you don't get any bites on this communication to your donors, no worries. But our data shows that's unlikely. So again, from baby boomers, Gen Z, philanthropists of all demographics are investing across crypto and stocks. And that I think is really key. I know that sometimes it can seem like this is a little bit of a daunting task, not really sure like where to put this in, but here's a great simple template. Send it out to some of your friendlies going into the last week of the year. And everybody's always surprised at how much crypto is in their network. They've just never asked, or donors just haven't been made aware it's an option, or donors just haven't been reminded that it's an option. So going into the last week of the year, I hope this helps. A little something there. If you need any additional support, of course, our team is here at the Giving Block. It's our prime time. It's our Super Bowl. It's all hands on deck. So, Pietro, maybe you want to close this out on 2024.
Oh man, I appreciate that. I want to say for everyone who's been listening, and I think we don't say it enough, but Nick and I are super appreciative of the fact that you give us your time, whether it's every other week or every episode or however long or however much you do listen in. It's super appreciative that you take the time to want to educate yourself on crypto philanthropy and crypto more generally. We're super excited and thrilled to have started this podcast this year. And honestly, we got super lucky with it being a very active year and exciting year for crypto. So, not that we planned that, but we're super thankful for that as well. I think in a sort of retrospective way, I think we've come a long way observing the industry, mature since when we started the show. We were just talking about how cool these ETF things were. And now we're talking about, the price of Bitcoin being over six figures and that not really being all that much of a shock anymore. I mean, it's all happened so quickly, but we're super thrilled to be bringing you more news, more updates, and more, I would say, stats and sort of educational content around crypto philanthropy, around sort of the bigger themes across the crypto sector. And we're super excited to take you into 2025, and would really welcome any of your feedback on any of the channels where you might reach us. And if you have any questions for the team, please feel free to reach out to Nick, especially, and the Giving Block team in particular. But that's going to wrap it up from my side. Can't wait to take a few days off, ring in the new year, and then be right back to it. And Nick, I'll pass the baton once more because you've been here day in and day out, and would love to hear any final thoughts from your end.
Yeah, just wanted to end 2024 with a big thank you to everybody who, again, has supported the podcast and all of our guests who have joined. Thank you so much. It's been great. We also have a lot of great guests that are already in the queue for 2025. So if you've enjoyed some episodes from the Giving Block, there's a lot of great things that are coming down the pike. So on behalf of the team, we wish all of you fundraisers out there a very successful end to 2024, but the work is just getting started, and we can't wait to see what's going to happen in crypto philanthropy in 2025. Happy holidays, everybody, and Happy New Year, and we'll see you next time.